Hi, so as some of you will be aware, my guild and I have finally cleared Mythic Nighthold. And as usual, I put out a kill video. These are not normal part of my channel. They're not monetized, obviously, because I tend to put copyrighted music over them. Because this is something I've done for many years, long before I ever even thought of having a channel. Even when I had the YouTube channel, that's when it up there, because that's what the channel was originally made for, just to post videos like this for guildies and friends. So I'm not going to stop that now. But there was a bit of an issue. Obviously, a number of you like to watch these as well. And I got some various messages quite shortly after posting it throughout the Friday, saying, oh, by the way, it seems to be blocked in my country. The countries where it appears to be blocked are the United States and France, at least. There's maybe a few others as well. And it's probably because of some of the kick-ass music that I put on it that is unappreciated, or in actual fact, the companies that own the rights to that music in those countries probably say, no, YouTube, you can't do that. So what I said I would do is put the Gul'dan kill footage on the background to another video that I will do this weekend. So I was thinking, okay, so, I was looking at the videos I'm planning to do this weekend, and the fact that I did a 6-hour stream today, which was twice as long as I was expecting, obviously cut down the video making time as well. And I'm looking at thinking, well, we want a nice 12-minute segment, but not necessarily going to fit into any of the ones I want to do. So why don't I just talk about how Nighthold has gone for my guild? Then it's just audio on here. So for those people who want to watch the kill video for Gul'dan, you can just mute me and watch it with your own music in the background. Or if you've seen that one, it wasn't blocked in your country, and you just want to listen to me ramble on about how Nighthold went for us, then you can just go and do your world quests and just listen to this as a podcast. Everyone's a winner. So let's start at the beginning then. Obviously the start of the Mythic release. So at the point of view of Mythic release, now you would expect the first few bosses were no problem, right? Sort of. And then not at all. Scorpion was not a problem, of course. I mean, Scorpion is just Scorpion. There isn't a great deal different between Heroic and Mythic. And of course, we did when Mythic opened, we did our Heroic and normal run as well, as we'd expect to. We don't do split runs, so there was no need to weave those in. So then we went into Mythic. Kill Scorpion, no problem at all. And this was the second raid night. We do Wednesday, Thursday, Monday. So obviously Wednesday was spent doing the Heroic and normal. And I think that fed a little bit into the Thursday. Can't remember. But what I do remember is when we got to Chronomatic Anomaly, it was not going all our way at all. Huge problem. Ultimately stemming from the fact that we didn't really have a plan for it. The guild had only very recently had a bit of a restructuring. But it was only a bit of a restructuring. There's one particular officer who said that he wanted to do tactics. So I said, okay, well, that's great. You can do that. You can put tactics on the forum. We can all discuss it. Great. But that's not what happened. So there were no tactics on the forum, other than some Fat Boss videos that someone else had posted, because there was clearly nothing going up on the forum. So we get to Chronomatic Anomaly, and of course no one knows what we're going to do. We might have read up on the fight, but we don't know what we are going to do as a group, because you have different strategies for different bosses. It is quite interesting. Sometimes you'll get people saying, oh, well, we do it like any other guild. I remember when I joined a guild, when I joined Horde, my last guild, I said, okay, how do you do these bosses? And the guild master said, oh, we're doing them like anyone else. And it's like, okay, we'll go through them anyway. And there's not a single boss that they did in the way that I was used to doing it, because it never is. You might think you're doing it in the only sensible way, but in actual fact, different rosters are going to be able to deal with fights in slightly different ways. So the upshot of it was that we didn't know what we were doing. So then this officer starts to explain what he's intending for us, which doesn't include healer cooldowns, and he's saying, well, DPS, I don't really do the healer cooldown stuff like that. So the healer cooldowns weren't sorted in advance. You can imagine how much longer that's going to take, especially when the strategy we were adopting, which you'd found, obviously looking logs of other guilds, was a high DPS one where we burn through a particular phase and let the stacks go quite high before we sort of dispel that or interrupts. And we died a lot. We died a lot for a couple of reasons. First of all, we didn't have the insane DPS that the guild that this strategy was being modelled on had. And also, we didn't have the healing cooldown sorted out, so we were taking stupendous amounts of damage. And the upshot of this, obviously then we're trying to fix it on the hoof after giving this a load of go. There's a lot of moaning going on officer chat, I can tell you, about the fact that we're not ready, we're not prepared for this. This is the second boss. This should be getting bowled over. And we're making a right arse of it. And it was just embarrassing. So we came back the next night, not the following night, but the next raid night on the Monday, and we had a much better strategy because we'd sort of said, look, we cannot model it on a guild that is not us. We have to sort of take account of our guild, and it was a very easy fight. You just do it in a safe, easy way, and there is no problem with it. And that's what we did eventually. And then we killed that. And then we went on to Trilliax. Trilliax was no real problem. The extra phases in there are the ads. You have to make sure that you get Spell Steal or Purge or whatever on the buff that the ad gets, but ultimately you're focusing the ad down, obviously cleaving onto the boss. And then that was it. So Trilliax went down very quickly as well. Obviously, the only real difficulty with Trilliax was getting people to realise that actually, do you know what? You need to eat cake. You need to coordinate the cake a lot better than on Heroic. And even that was a bit dicey. So there was a few wipes, but it was only a few. I mean, it shouldn't have been any. But it was only a few, so we killed that quite quickly as well. And then had to go on Croesus. And Croesus, which we didn't kill that first week. So the first week, we got 3 out of 10, which was, in terms of the progress, 3 out of 10 for me would have been okay. What was disappointing is we wasted a lot of time getting that 3 out of 10 and didn't have very much time to practice the 4 out of 10. Now, Croesus struck me as being very much like Gruul from Blackrock Foundry, and I had a big fear that it was the same sort of thing. The guild I was in when we did Blackrock Foundry, we went to Gruul earlier than we had to. I remember we did Beast Lord Down first, but when we went to Gruul, well, we did Allgarder after that, then Gruul. And we wasted a lot of time on it because it's ultimately an easy fight, but with a DPS check. And we weren't quite making the DPS check. And then in that guild in Blackrock Foundry, we decided to change and just go and do another boss. And that turned out to be the better idea. But we'd lost a lot of time on Gruul, and that did affect us. I was fearing the same thing here. We were on Croesus. We did not kill this quickly. But the issue was it wasn't the DPS as such. It was the soaking. Because the thing with Croesus, it's a very well-designed fight in that you've got mechanics to deal with. And those mechanics prevent you doing, you can't do DPS and the mechanics at the same time because you're going out to soak, and you've got to go out and soak as many as possible. So that's brilliant because everyone knows that all levels of this, or most levels of this game, a lot of players will focus on their own personal DPS, and they can't understand that not doing DPS is actually a good thing to do in the long run. So the soaking was an issue. But then the other thing you think about it this way is, for every burning pitch that is not soaked, you have an ad spawn. Okay, so you've got to DPS that ad. That ad has, whatever it was, about 11, 12 million health, something like that. So that's an extra 11, 12 million health that we have got to do of damage for every one that is not soaked. Now, okay, if you have a tight-knit bunch together, then you can sort of cleave them. It's not as bad as it seems, although you're still cleaving when your single target would surely do more. So it took us some time to get the soaking right, because even when we got to the end of the fight and got to Berserk and we hadn't quite killed the boss, you could argue at that point we're not really making the DPS check. But again, in reality, it's because the soaking was not brilliant. And I've sometimes looked at guilds since, way behind us, and I'm looking at them thinking, you're soaking better than we ever have. We never really did the soaking well. We eventually just got to the point where we had the combination of our DPS and our soaking was just about enough to kill it, even though it was on the second kill that was the tightest, actually. That's where we actually fell into the water, but Croesus died before we hit the drink. But that took us a long time. We spent a long time on Croesus. And it's because, in my opinion, we never really did the soaking properly. We just got better gear and were able to tumble our way across the line. And for weeks afterwards, we could easily wipe on Croesus. We weren't one-shotting it for some considerable time after it. But then you think about the options, because it doesn't have to be the first boss you go to. Aloriel was a realistic one. The reason why, like, a lot of guilds would have gone to Croesus first is because in the initial push, more guilds had killed Croesus fourth than Aloriel fourth. And I think, but sometimes that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You see that a lot more guilds are going to Croesus first than Aloriel. So then you start to think, well, Croesus must be easier. So then more guilds do that. And even if they get stuck, like we did, you might still imagine it was the easiest one. And so you push through it, you persist, and then you kill it first. So then you get to a situation where loads of guilds are killed Croesus fourth, so everyone gets it into their heads it's the easiest. But in our case, it was still the most sensible one to go fourth, because Aloriel was a non-starter for us at the time, because it was a 5 healer fight. Okay, sure, you could do it with 4 healers, but let's be honest, we weren't going to be doing that. We needed 5. But we didn't have 5, we had 4. Which was a massive problem for us. We had, you know, and I was trying to recruit a healer. We had huge roster problems all through Nighthold, right from the start and continuing all the way through. Someone asked me today how many people have left our guild during Nighthold, and I don't even want to count. It's a lot. For various reasons. Some of them, like, joined and then immediately left. But nonetheless, it was really, really tough to get a healer. We eventually did get a healer in the form of a monk, who turned out to be really good, Mistweaver monk. But it was at the same time as one of our restoration shamers was going rogue. But what it meant was it was quite a good thing in a way, because most of the fights needed 4 healers. Croesus needed 3. But the benefit here was, so we had this guy going rogue. So on most of the fights he plays rogue, but he'd play shaman for the healing on Aloriel. So we had 5 healers there, but we weren't having to sit a healer for the other fights because, well, you know, they was playing the rogue. Because what we ideally wanted was a healer that we could sort of have go DPS. The only healer that actually had an effective DPS spec was a healer we would not want doing anything other than healing on any fight. So then we got to Aloriel. We got our 5th healer. We went on. Sorry, no, we didn't, because we didn't have our 5th healer. Apologise. I'm missing one out. We went to Tichondrius 5th. We didn't have the healers for it. So we went to Tichondrius and we spent a lot of time on that as well. We had a number of issues with Tichondrius. We had 2 main issues. One of them was that a tank who kept dying at the same point. Now, this was due this is to do with being vocal as well. I remember there was an issue where this particular tank died at quite similar times. I was getting in my head, it's to the same thing. In that situation, what you ideally want is for the tank to say, okay, I keep dying at this point, something needs to be done. So that tank needs to think to himself, okay, is there a cooldown that I can use there? Because obviously this is something that's killing me on a regular basis. If the answer is no, then they need to vocalize this to the healing team and says, okay, look, you know, I'm dying at this point. You know, I need something. I haven't got any other cooldowns to spare at this point. Have you got something you can give me? And if the answer there is no, it's like, okay, well, you know, and you work something out. You have this communication between the tank and the healing team. The problem was that the tank wasn't very vocal and the healing team wasn't very vocal. So, you know, so it went on for longer than it should. And, you know, there's other people who are also noticing it who were vocalizing it. But you know, ultimately this needed to be between the tank and the healer to sort out. So that cost us quite a lot. The other thing that cost us a lot was bats, getting enough bats dead in that phase. And one of the main problems we had is grouping them. An easy way, of course, would be to have, say, a Brewmaster monk or even a Windwalker monk and put the Ox statue down, and that groups them up beautifully. And it got so bad that we actually had a Demon Hunter who had been playing Windwalker monk in the previous raids in Legion, but he was poorly geared now on his Windwalker monk. But we brought the badly geared monk in, not to do damage, but to give us this statue to see if it would help. In the end, we did without it. We sort of agreed on some other ways of dealing with it. But we spent... This is, again, the difference it can make by just having the right classes. We spent quite a lot of time coming up with different ways of dealing with the bat phase to try and cope with the Brands of Argus so they didn't blow up unexpectedly, and to try and get the bats gathered up sort of so they could be AoE down so that we could have enough orbs within the time, when a simple statue would have actually made all the difference. So we lost a lot of time on Taekwondo as well. You can see a pattern emerging here. We're losing a lot of time. So then we, as I say, we get our healer. We've got Taekwondo down. We've got our healer. We're going to go and do Alorio. At this point, some people who've been in the guild for a bit are talking about leaving and actively leaving at this point. And it's all getting a bit sticky as well with the roster. But, you know, Alorio actually didn't take us too long, but there were some issues. There were some delays in it, again, because of roster issues. But, you know, the strategy we decided on sort of following was pretty much the one we did. There were a few tweaks during it, but not a massive number. So it sort of worked out. It did sort of work out. But then on to bot. Now, but you know, by this time, you know, again, we had a period now. We'd got 6 bosses down, but not a single what strategy on the forums. So we constantly, every time we got to a new boss, we're going in blind. Because even if people have read up on the bosses, and you know how it is in most guilds, a lot of people won't have even read up on the boss. A lot of people, you know, because what you do for Mythic is you go, okay, well, these are the heroic mechanics. You know those anyway. So these are the extra Mythic mechanics we need to watch out for. Well, a lot of people didn't even know what the heroic mechanics for. Because a lot of the heroic mechanics above a certain gear level and skill level, you can ignore anyway, or it's someone else's problem. You don't have to worry about it. So there's a lot of players didn't even know what the heroic mechanics are. And I'm thinking, okay, Botanist next. There's quite a bit to Botanist. It's going to take a while. So I took matters into my own hands and I thought, okay, I'm going to post something myself. So I sort of researched that one and I posted something up in terms of a plan of action that we could go with. And what I also started doing, and I've done that with each boss subsequent, was going online and finding guilds that had only just killed it. I have not, or to begin with, actually, I was going with guilds where there was people in it that I knew, so that I could talk to them about it. And I was basically finding a kill video online, nicking it, basically, and doing my own video where I'm pointing out things, explaining the strategy, pointing out things. And then what happens is we do a bit of progress on it. Maybe we refine a few things. So then I did another video where I would explain, so what we're doing now, and this is how this is going to work, and this is what we need to do. Again, pointing out how it should work on an actual kill video, but then also using footage from our progress wipes to highlight the way we were doing it as well, and things not to do and things to do and all the rest of it. So we were finally getting to a position where we were at least now having some stuff put onto the forums, not miles ahead of time, because the problem was juggling that around recruitment as well, which takes loads of time. It was not that easy. But at least we were getting something on now and people were able to sort of view it. What I found was, though, people are terrible in this guild at looking at forums. So I would post the video on the forums in the strategy section and you'd get like a few people watch it. And then I sort of realised what I had to do was actually post it in the Discord and then everyone would watch it, or most people would watch it. But yeah, Botanist is one that we did. It wasn't too bad. It did take longer to kill than it should have done. There's no getting away from that. It did take longer, but it didn't actually feel too bad. And then the other thing is, I think at that time, you know, we'd gone through so many roster problems and we were still having them. But I felt that we were sort of getting stronger, because I remember getting ready for that reset. And I was saying to the other officers at a meeting, and I said, okay, on Wednesday we're going to be clearing all our farm content, because we're used to then doing our farm content and it taking more than a night. And I said, you know, we're going to get 6 out of 10. And people laughed at me. But we did. We actually did get 6 out of 10 with a decent amount of time for Botanist at the end of it. Or at least some time for Botanist at the end of it. So we were starting to get our farm done a lot better now. And this was actually a big attraction for someone who joined the guild a bit later. The fact that, you know, you look at 2 guilds that are on the same level of progress, but you look at one of them and they actually struggle with their farm content. So they don't get as much progress time in. We were now getting our farm content properly done. We weren't messing about on the farm content. That was being done properly. And so, yeah, with Botanist, it was always just a case of getting... The problem with Botanist is you have this first phase, which is exactly the same as Heroic. There should be no problems with the first phase. You shouldn't have anyone dying. But it takes a certain amount of time to do it. And then you've got the second phase where there's a few extra little things about it, but it's not that bad. It's not that much different to Heroic. There's just a couple of things to be aware of. So it's all about getting into phase 3 and learning phase 3. But the problem is it takes quite a long time to get there. And if you're sort of getting close to it and then, but you've used your battle reses up by then because people have died in 1 and 2, then you don't necessarily get many pulls in a night. And that was what was happening. It wasn't taking us a long time to get to phase 3, but it was taking us too long when we were in phase 3 because, first of all, we would have people dying earlier on, calling wipes earlier then, and wasting a lot of time doing that. And again, usually it's the usual thing, not focusing on mechanics. And some of the mechanics were getting a bit more difficult now. Although you can argue that Croesus, Tichondrius, Aluriel and Botanist are all in that middle bracket of difficulty, I would say Botanist is a step up from the other 3, really. Not to the same level that Star Augur was at the time, but it is a bit of a step up. But what pleased me quite a lot is when Botanist went down, we actually farmed that really quickly. We didn't take many wipes to kill it on farm after that. So then we got onto Star Augur. Now this was just before the nerf. So we still had the thing where you could use that weak aura that gave you the red and green nameplates, sorry. So you didn't even have to look at what constellation you got. You just looked for the green person and stayed away from the red people. So that was really easy. The problem was that then Blizzard decided, we had some decent progress on it and we were going to go okay. And then Blizzard decided to nerf it. And the nerf did us no good at all, because we were actually quite close to killing it at the time. So all the nerf actually did was make it easy for other guilds who were a bit behind us to get ahead of us, because you'd think to yourself, okay, well, if they nerfed it, you've sort of got the fight done, you should kill it quite quickly then. And yes, we should have done. But at that time, we had massive roster problems. You know, we were basically operating on a very much a skeleton crew. And we're not a guild where everyone has like even 95% attendance. So it only takes like one person to be off that night and we ain't got a raid. And that was what was happening. We had a lot of unreliability. And so, you know, it was actually round about that time we actually had another guild meeting, because the guild had already been through bad times in January. We had another one basically saying to people, look, you know, we can sort this out, we can pull this out, but it's going to be hard graft, and it's going to be all ruined if we, you know, manage to get a couple more people in, which is what we need, and then another couple leave, you know, and it'll be a never-ending cycle and a downward spiral. We were already losing so many world ranks, and so we were basically saying to people, we know there's a couple of people leaving. They were being kind enough to not leave immediately, to give us some time to try and replace them. But we needed to know where everyone else was. And everyone else was really... No one was going, oh, maybe we should leave or anything like that. Everyone wanted the guild to work. So that was really heartening. Because I was really... The day before, when I suggested calling this meeting, because we couldn't do a raid anyway, I remember thinking, or even saying to the officers, that I think this is it. You know, I think we ain't going to be able to go any further because we just can't get new people in. And because we can't, it's hitting our progress, we're actually just becoming even more unappealing to prospective recruits. So everyone said they really wanted to dig in, and they enjoyed the guild, they liked the guild, and they want it to work. So this was great. So that's what we went with, and we did manage to get a few people in. We eventually got the Star Augur, not without losing a lot of ranks, but we eventually got it. Again, a long time after we should have done. And would you believe it, sod's law, when we were actually getting to the kill, is when I started cocking things up. That was really annoying. So then on to Elisand. Now, at this point, I'm thinking, okay, already I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be tight here with the cutting edge, because we're getting quite late on now. But fortunately, one thing I hadn't really taken into account is, because I kept thinking in my own head, you've got these things, you've got the first 3 bosses, easy. The next 4 bosses, medium. Star Augur, definitely a step up from those 4. But then Elisand and Gul'dan, the really tough bosses. However, what made the likes of Elisand and Gul'dan really tough is because you've got complex mechanics to deal with at the same time as extremely tight DPS checks. Because the fight gets out of control very quickly if you let phases drag on too long. So it's one of these fights where as the phase goes on, shit just gets worse and worse. So, and it's like juggling plates, and every so much time you get another plate you have to be spinning or juggling or whatever. I'm mixing metaphors here. And that was no good. But we're so late on, we're so far behind on progress, that 7.2's come out. We've got our 7.2 traits. Our DPS is loads higher than the people who were doing it in a reasonable amount of time. So those DPS checks were damn sight easier. It was actually relatively straightforward on Elisand to get out of phase 1 before the 4th set of orbs. Well, that's what you want. You know, and everything got a lot easier. And then they nerfed Elisand and Gul'dan as well in that point, just bowled over. And then, but even then we had tough times, because Elisand, I remember our first full night of progress, we didn't take that many nights of progress on her. But it did take several weeks, because again, raids either had to be called off, or we were going with what we knew were really suboptimal groups. But you know, we had a warlock, for example, that just joined us, and he was kicking the shit out of the damage on that fight on Elisand, and then he left and joined, you know, a more progressed guild. So he just basically used us to get his achievements for like 8 out of 10, and then buggered off elsewhere. So that was really annoying, because that was a huge DPS that we just lost. So we had to try and manage that again, and relearn how to control, because it's a control of damage as well issue. How to control that damage to get everything to line up properly. But yeah, we eventually got Elisand, and it didn't take that long. It was all right. And then on to Gul'dan. And Gul'dan didn't really take a long time, but we still had to learn it. We had to learn, because all of the phases are a bit different, and the way you deal with it is certainly different to Heroic. So again, I did the usual thing of trying to look at a video, a kill video of someone who killed it recently, trying to cobble it together, falteringly, I think, with Gul'dan. And then we got to a period last reset where we got two Fury Warriors, well, two Warriors. One of them was arms, really. It just changed to Fury. But another one's a dedicated Fury Warrior who's just stunning amounts of DPS. And we were going to lose him. And we sort of, in the officer team, discussed this, and we're going, well, the issue is, if we lose him, we lose a load of damage. Not just overall damage, but damage on the eyes. He was blowing them up. And damage on the parasites. He was blowing them up. Now, I have to say that I wasn't totally convinced that the damage wouldn't be done elsewhere anyway. Because sometimes you get a situation where someone's just beating the damage on a particular mob. Other people just don't try it as much. They just focus their damage on the single target stuff instead. So it's a distribution of damage. That being said, he was going to be going away on the Monday. So we had a choice. We could either do our farm as normal and get a load of gear, but we'd pretty much just have Thursday to kill it. And at this point, we'd been in phase 3 a few times, but not right into it. We hadn't really experienced it properly. And I just knew, it's all right people saying phase 2 is the hardest phase and stuff. Actually, once you've taken the DPS out of the equation, phase 3 is harder. Because in terms of the mechanics, I think anyway, my personal opinion. But we certainly hadn't ironed it all out. But then what we could do is extend, and we get 2 full nights at it, but we don't get the extra gear. And we were getting extra gear. We're not like disenchanting a load of stuff. You know, we are getting upgrades each week, even at this point. I was 50-50 on it, but there were 2 officers in favour of extending and 1 not. And I sort of agreed that probably it's 50-50, but maybe it's 51-49 to extending is maybe the slightly better bet. So that's what we did. And we actually got fairly close. We sort of felt like we could have killed it on that Thursday night, but we didn't. And at this point, my fear was that a lot of people would not... We wouldn't kill it the following week, because a lot of people would feel that because we'd extended specifically because we were going to lose this player, and people would get it into their heads, we need this player to kill it, and would maybe not then do as well, because we couldn't go the following Monday, because even though this player had left, so would a couple of other key ones. So we absolutely couldn't raid Gul'dan on the Monday. So, you know, that was another raid lost. So then this reset, there was no point in extending now. So we cleared it, we got gear, and we had over an hour to go on to Gul'dan again. And we went on to Gul'dan, and we had some really great pulls. We were getting into phase 3 consistently. We were having the odd person die, usually in phase 1 rather than phase 2. Phase 2 was going right through, and I think that was down to the fact we'd previously been having one rogue for it, and then another rogue had been buggering about, basically thinking about quitting, but now had decided not to. So we sort of back, was in, and it just made it go so smoothly. Just having 2 rogues, again, this class thing. Just instead of me soaking it, or someone else as well, that aren't as well suited to it, just having 2 rogues able to soak the well along with the off tank, just made it a dream. It was fantastic. And it just meant we were getting straight into phase 3. And we actually felt that we could have killed it on that Wednesday night. We got really close. I still felt that there were a couple of things we needed to iron out, but it was doable. But we didn't. So then the following night, now here was the thing. So then a bit of a bombshell on the day itself. Again, remember, we've got quite a lot of unreliable people in the group. And someone on the very day itself, not in advance, but on the day, said they would have to leave 2 hours in to go and be a taxi somewhere, to go and drive some people. So now, at that point, I'm thinking to myself, we're definitely going to kill it tonight because we've got a whole night on it. Look how close we were getting just with that hour. We're going to definitely kill it. Now we've got half a raid, so we've got 2 hours. I still felt confident, but not as confident as I was given a full night, because I know what we're like. Sometimes we can go 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And indeed, that's what happened. I couldn't understand the difference. We were hardly getting to phase 3 at all. We were dying in phase 1 and phase 2, just people dropping dead. And it was exactly the same group. We'd gone with exactly the same group, which was not pleasing to certain people who were left out, who had been on earlier progress, but were not able to make it on the Wednesday, and therefore were left out. But we went with the, you don't change a winning team. And it was a disaster, an absolute disaster. And I'm thinking to myself, and now we're being told as well, again, people don't give us enough notice, there's going to be people missing on the Monday. So we're now looking at the following reset. And I'm just there looking at world ranks falling like, hailstones in front of my eye. Thinking, Gordon Bennett, what are we doing? And fortunate, so this guy had to leave 2 hours in. Fortunately, we got a replacement, which is someone who was in the guild and very, very good player, but had gone social because he sort of wanted to leave the guild, but, for various reasons ended up just staying as a social. So he wasn't really playing. In fact, for a month, he wasn't playing at all. So his artifact knowledge wasn't even bang up to date either. But he came in and, credit to him, picked it up fairly quickly, given that he'd seen a few streams, but that's about it. But we're still having this issue of people dying there. We're getting a few more phase 3s now. We're starting to get in there. We're making a few more mistakes, but that was a good thing because they were new mistakes. I mean, I like new mistakes because then you learn from it and you don't do it again. What I dislike are the repeated mistakes. When a bad thing happens, like, I mean, I died due to my own fault once on the whole of Gul'dan progress, where it was after a storm, just before a storm, but it was sort of after a storm in a way, but before the next winds, and I'd had to drop Flames of Sargo, so I was near the edge, and then I was killing the eye moved into a bad position, so I was on the eye. Then the winds came in, and even with my movement speed, I couldn't do anything against it, and I was too close to the edge and went knocked off. So from that, I learned, okay, I need to be a certain distance away from the edge when that comes in, even if that means moving away from the eye if it's in a bad position, so that I know I won't get knocked off. So it never happened again. Even though the same set of circumstances happened again, because I thought about it and learnt from it, the same consequence never happened again. And that's just what I wish more people would do. But anyway, so then we're getting to the point, there's about 40 minutes left. My head's in my hands at this point. And someone said something, I don't remember what. And I remember saying, if we kill this boss tonight, I'm going to put 500,000 gold in the bank. To fund, like, armour repairs, free repairs. With no confidence that this would actually happen at this point. I'm despairing. I'm not wanting to say that, but I'm despairing internally. And we get really close. We get to what I think is the last pull. There's like 10 minutes to go and it's over a 10-minute fight. And we have a really bad pull. No, we haven't. Well, it's a phase 2 wave. So now we've got like 7 minutes left or something. And then we have a disastrous pull where we die pretty much straight away. Or something happens and you might as well just wipe. So we wipe again. So we've got 5 minutes left to go now. I'm thinking this is it. And an officer, the raid leader's saying, we're not going to call a wipe here. We're going to ask if people want to extend, but after this pull. Now, it only takes one. We've got a replacement, I suppose, but it depends who has to leave. Because we don't ever insist on that we extend. You know, it's always a free thing. If we choose to extend, if a single person, it's not even democratic, if a single person can't stay, then that's fine. No hard feelings. So it only took really what certainly, if it was a DPS, we could maybe get away with one, depending on who it was. If it was a healer or a tank, we're buggered. If they have to go. So this was what was the guaranteed last pull of the night. And I'm just going through the motions at this point, as I have for all the time. And we kill it. We killed it. It was not tidy. It was not smooth. But nonetheless, all the issues had been smooth. You know, all the things had been addressed. All the things that could go wrong had been addressed. Some of them were still going wrong, but we had a plan for them and it all worked out. And yeah, and that's it. That is the story of our Mythic Nighthold. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I'll see you later.